Morning. Thank you. Thank you very much. Um, Thanks, Drew. Thanks to CreativeMornings and MIA for having me. Um, yeah, I'm not sure if I won or lost with the team, but I'm gonna give it a shot anyway. Um, so one of the most common questions we get, or I get, is what is Zoostone? What do you guys do over there? And this has been a surprisingly difficult question to answer, actually. Um, part of it has to do with the fact that we started in really in reaction against something. But the other reason is because we've really tried to change for every year that we've been in business. And after 11 years, I think we actually have become, and I have become better at answering this question. But the thing I've also realized is that that's probably the wrong question to ask if you really want to understand Zeus Jones. And I think the better question to ask is, why Zeus Jones? Why are we around? And so, in honor of this month's theme, that's the question that I'm going to try and answer. So, my story and my journey to Zeus Jones begins really in around '96. I was working in an agency called Anderson Lemke in San Francisco. It's one of the hottest technology agencies in the country. And we had Microsoft's digital advertising business, which was massive. And my boss and I started to sort of look at how we were thinking about digital advertising, the dawn of digital advertising. And we kind of realized that something wasn't right. We saw that we were using digital advertising really in very interruptive ways. We were thinking about digital advertising as a billboard. And really what we were seeing with the internet was this ability to actually do things for people, be useful. So we wrote a presentation to the leadership of the agency at the time. And we said, we think we're treating digital advertising in a poor way. We think there's a better way to treat digital advertising. We think we could do things to be useful, to help people. And we delivered the presentation to the leadership of the agency. And the response we got back was, do you know that digital advertising accounts for about $30 million of revenue? And what are we going to replace that with? What are we going to do if we don't do digital advertising? So really, they ignored us, and we continued to develop digital advertising. In '99, I moved from Anderson Lemke, and I joined an agency called 50 Silverstein in San Francisco. It was one of the most creative agencies in the country, and I worked on HP, and our job was to launch a service, a product called e-services. It was very complicated. It was really a precursor to Web 2.0, and it literally took me and one of my partners a month and a half to actually just even understand what it was. And when we did finally understand what it meant, we realized it was massive. We realized it had the potential to change everything, to change how HP went to market, but not just that, to change really business and the economy itself. And so I went and tried to explain this to the creatives at the time, my creative director at the time. And he basically said, this is too complicated. This is not the sort of thing that we do really great advertising offers. We need something that's a bit simpler. And I remember, at one point being very frustrated in a meeting and sort of saying, shouldn't we be thinking about the business? Shouldn't we be doing something that actually means something? And everyone looked at me like I was an alien, because really the point at a creative agency like Goodby was not to solve business problems. The point was to develop creative advertising. And my boss sort of took me to the side and kind of like talking to a child, sort of explained, here's what we do at Goodby. And so we dumbed down the brief and went on to create a series of utterly forgettable ads. So in 2001, finally, I actually ended up here in Minneapolis at Fallon. And, for the first few years I was there, I thought it was the most amazing place in the world. It was filled with incredibly progressive and smart people. really wanting to do the right thing, really thinking about the future in very, very smart and brave ways. And on the side, with the people who are now my partners, we started to experiment with kind of new ways to think about marketing, new ways to think about advertising, doing in some ways many of the things that I think I'd imagined that we might be able to do back in '96. And we actually sort of started to see that these things could be really a lot more effective than traditional advertising, that they could be a lot more useful, a lot better for people, and a lot better for business. And all this was going really, really well until in about 2004, the agency changed creative leadership, and brand new creative leadership came in, and they wanted to go back to traditional advertising. And traditional advertising creativity was what they cared about. They didn't really care about the experiments that we were doing. They didn't find them useful or meaningful at all. So one of my partners and I, Rob, we made a pitch to the leadership at Fallon, and we said, hey, we should, it's all well and good to be doing traditional advertising, but we should really have a hedge against this. We should be thinking about the future. We know there's a future that's coming. Let's think about what we could do to actually sort of give ourselves an option if and when this thing happens. And we got, kind of the same message that I'd gotten in other parts of my career. The CFO basically said, advertising pays our bills. What are we going to replace advertising with? At that time, Citibank was our biggest client. The fee that they paid us paid for 30 people in the agency. And he literally said, what are we going to tell these 30 people that they would work on? So we did nothing, and the business got worse and worse. And eventually Citibank fired us because we were literally spending $500 million on advertising that was doing absolutely nothing for their business. But in between that time, the culture at Fallon just disintegrated. It got so bad. People blamed everyone else. It was just a sort of sense of fear and dread that set across the agency. And really, that was the point where the people who are now my partners and I started talking about, what are we going to do next? And that was in 2006. And it's interesting because, I was thinking that when Drew first sort of said, honesty, it's it, that's you. I had really never thought about honesty in my career until probably this point in my career. It just hadn't been a factor in anything that I had done in any of my previous jobs. Success in advertising is really not about honesty. In fact, in many ways, it was quite the reverse. But when we started thinking about what we were going to do next, and when we started thinking about planning for Zeus Jones, I'd say honesty and the ability to be free, that became the driving force in pretty much everything that we did. We decided that we wanted to be able to never be trapped, to never have to do things because they were the economic or commercial things to do. We wanted to be able to do things because they were the right things to do. We wanted to be able to have open hearts, to believe in the things that we were doing, to do things that we believed in. And when we started talking about Zeus, we literally set down sort of a set of values before we even talked about what we were going to do as a business. So we wanted to, we said that this was the last job we ever wanted. We wanted to bring all of ourselves to our work. We wanted to care about the people we work with, to respect them, to sit on the same side of the table. We wanted to assume the best, and I think really importantly, we wanted to have open hearts. We wanted to be pure and as open as possible, and to continue to grow and never stop learning. And really, the business model kind of emerged from this. This is this shows you how poor business people we were in 2006. But this was the business plan that we wrote up. It doesn't have a plan at all. and the way we got here was we literally listed everything that we hated about the lives we had been living and the world we'd been living in. The politics, the poisoned relationships, um, the the idea that we were in a business of manipulation and just trying to con people into doing things. Um, and then we listed all the things that we really loved. The fact that we could solve problems, the fact that we could have huge impact on culture and business and society. And we built really the business around that. And, at sort of the most basic level, and I think that's sort of the top thing, we kind of had this idea that if we could build the marketing into the things that companies did, if we could convince companies to do better things and think about our job as influencing people inside of companies, not just outside of companies, that we could change how business works. We could make business better. We could make business better, not just for people outside, but for people inside as well. And the big problem with that was that in 2007 we had no idea whatsoever about how to do that. I mean, you saw the business plan. It's not really a plan. It's a series of wishes. Our entire careers have been about kind of wrapping imagery and ideas around businesses rather than building them into businesses. So we started looking around and we kind of realized that there were sort of markers in the future. We looked out at companies in the world and we saw that there was really remarkable companies emerging out there in the world who were kind of doing some of the things that we were thinking about. And we saw that they were, actually winning without advertising by doing sort of better things. And we kind of wanted to ask why. We wanted to ask why they were doing it. So really one of the first things we did was we actually just started being very public about the fact that we had no idea what was going on, but that we were really interested in understanding what it is that was happening in the world, why it was that these businesses were winning, why it was that they were doing things that really were breaking the rules. And a couple of really interesting things happened. One was a whole community of people who were also asking those questions kind of formed around us. And they became incredibly supportive and incredibly helpful as we really tried to build our business. The second thing that happened was clients started reaching out to us. And there were clients who also had the same questions. They had the same doubts about, the things that they were doing and the same questions about different ways that things could be done. And they started giving us projects that were really designed in many ways to help explore and understand what was happening in the world and either prove or disprove theories that we had about the way things could work. And, to this day, I would say it's questions like that that fuel our company. Pretty much every project that we have is a shared question that we have with our client about what could be, what could work, what might we do, how might things work. We work really hard at sort of maintaining a sense of ignorance and maintaining that sort of openness and honesty and that lack of feeling that you understand everything, because there's no way that you can. And as we've grown, our curiosity's grown. So we're now interested in more things. We've followed our interests. We've followed our curiosity into more areas. Industries are being reshaped. It's not just marketing, food, healthcare, health and wellness, financial services. They're all being reshaped in really, really interesting ways. And it's these questions that have really fueled sort of our entry into them. And everywhere we've gone into them, we've found like minds in those industries who are asking the same questions, who are trying to figure out the same thing. And that actually has been another amazingly powerful thing, because when I think about our best relationships with our clients, we're not bound together by transactions or contracts. We're actually bound together by curiosity. We're bound together by questions. And what it means is that our goals are aligned in a way that they just never were in any other part of my life. We're working together, really, rather than for each other. And our goal is to really be one team, to really sit as we host in the beginning on one side of the table, on the same side of the table. And as we've grown, that's actually become more literal than not. Many of our relationships now are ones where we literally sit together, either at their place or at our place, and we just ask questions. And I think the blurrier the borders between us and our clients become, the better off we are. When we were thinking about how we would get paid, we also brought this idea of freedom into that. And this is one of the really sort of very difficult decisions we made. We'd recognized that the traditional way you get paid in the agency world is you do retained contracts that are based on time and hours and number of people applied. And one of the things that we'd realized at Fallon was that that was one of the things that really prevented you from doing anything. You had to sort of, there was a prescribed amount of effort that you put against things. You had to put the same amount of effort against it. You couldn't work harder. You couldn't work faster. It just wasn't economical. So we actually decided to be deliverable based rather than hours or time based. And so what that means is, when we sit down and we talk to our clients about what their problems are, before we even start sort of thinking about what we're going to do, we talk about what needs to happen in order for us to solve the problem that they have, and then we price against that, and that this gives us a massive amount of freedom around how we spend our time, who works on it, how much we work on it, how quickly we work on it. We make those decisions about how we work. Our clients don't make those decisions for us. And, so this has been a huge sort of decision for us. And one of the things that we found is that some clients have decided not to work with us because of it. It's been one of those things where we literally just can't sign a deal because we can't fit into the way that they choose to do business. On the other hand, we found that other clients have actually changed or altered their processes in order to accommodate us. And for me, this has actually become really a litmus test about who we want to work with. Are we sitting across the table from a company or a partner who values results and sort of values your unique contribution, or are we sitting across the table from a partner who just wants consistency and an easy way to measure you against the other people in their portfolio? I'd say the other downside about deliverables is every year we have no sort of regularity in our business. We have no security. Every year we start at zero, and we have to prove ourselves over again. But this actually forces us to continually push our thinking. And in many ways, we've essentially started loose from scratch 12 times now. There's a brilliant pianist, Vladimir Ashkenazy. He's one of my favorite Beethoven recordings is by him. And I was reading an interview with him, and he said, they were asking him, how is it that you get from one side of the piano to the other so quickly? And he said, the trick is not getting to the other side. The trick is forgetting that you were at this side. And that's something that we've really sort of taken to heart with our business. It's so important for us in starting every year to just drop the things that aren't useful, to forget that that's where you were, and to just simply go to where you want to be. And that's become a useful thing for our business, but it's also become a useful thing for the type of people who thrive in our business, because these are people who really do want to find something new, who have something to prove, who are curious, who want to make an impact. They want to do the same sorts of things that we do. They have the same kind of optimism that we do. They value freedom and honesty, and they put freedom and honesty above all else. And that is also incredibly helpful if you're a small business that's trying to compete with talent, because we can't really pay what other people can pay. But what we have found is that what we can't give you in sort of lavish perks or lavish salaries and those sorts of things, we can give in freedom and honesty. And in fact, this is, as you saw, the very same deal that my partners and I made for ourselves, which was there is a price that freedom and honesty are worth, and that there's a monetary value that you can put against that every single year, and for the whole of your life. And I would say the other benefit of this is that, what it means is we're inspired by the partners, the people that we work with. We know we're kind of motivated and driven by the same thing, and at a very deep level, our motives are aligned. We've also tried to bring this notion of kind of freedom and honesty into the way that we structure our company. So we have very few permanent structures or hierarchies. They tend to actually prevent progress and prevent things rather than enable things. So we've got 5 disciplines. Everyone makes something. We have no managers. We're pretty flat as an organization. We don't think people should be told what to do. We think they should be able to figure it out for themselves. And I would say this can be fairly disconcerting for some of the people if they're not used to it. But again, what it means is that we don't have a structure that we hold on to, and as every project is new, we're able to just sort of let any structure that we had in the past dissolve and create a structure for the job at hand. I've been boring a lot of my colleagues with this quote that I read from Coltrane, and he said that when he plays, he wants to start as if he was playing mid-sentence, and there's so much that goes into that for me. It's like it's about the level of talent, it's about the level of trust that we have with your colleagues, it's about the idea that magic happens without these interludes and without these long setups, and that we can just jump in and start playing and contributing. And this has become really a model for me in how we work and how we can work and what we should be able to do together. And I don't think it's, obviously he's talking about jazz and the creation of art, but I actually don't think that this is sort of unusual. I do think that, as we move forward, every kind of human activity that we do is going to require something like this. It's going to require people who are able to just jump in, trust each other enough, be comfortable and know themselves enough that they can just jump in and start kind of working and contributing together. And I think that's what, to me, this is what human creative output is about. It's about these surprising things that, happen when we get together and we're open and we bring all of ourselves into whatever we're doing. Our values have also shaped, the space that we're in, literally. In 2015, we moved into an office right around the corner from us. And, when we were sort of deciding to move in, we had long conversations about how do we make our values visible in this space. And, not through posters or mottos, but, through the feel and through the function of it. So we spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to make it, feel connected, feel light, feel collaborative, feel comfortable and warm. And I would say that the single most expensive thing that we have in our office is this hole that you can see that's cut in the floor, because we moved from a space that was all one floor, and we literally couldn't imagine being in a space where we weren't connected to each other, where we couldn't see each other. The work that we do here, I think, is better than the work that I've done anywhere else. It's more, it's more culturally connected. It's more powerful. It's more emotional, and I really believe, I've come to believe that this is obviously linked. In many ways, I don't understand how I was able to do creative work before without honesty, without truth. I don't understand how we were able to feel the work without having been open, even though I spent so much of my career doing that. And in some ways, I don't think it's possible to be in a creative business without being true, and without being open and honest. Because creative is about feeling first and thinking second. So we ask a lot of each other as we go. We kind of having this level of honesty and maturity. It's a responsibility, and it can be quite painful at times, and it's not really an environment for everyone, and that's something that I think we've had to become okay with. Even within sort of all of the alignment, there are so many different perspectives and so many different ideas that the different people bring, and they really have to be honoured and revered, but we have to balance those things with collective growth. We have to balance individual growth with collective growth, and we have to balance, impact with patience. We have to balance values with commercial realities. I mean, we haven't escaped the world. We still live in a business where we need to get paid, and then we have to balance things like how do we balance work with life and things like that. And bigger questions around, how can a company like this endure in a world where we seem to place less value on creative output and honesty and humanity. And in some ways, I think that these are questions that really drive kind of a lifetime of discovery. Deepak Chopra has another quote that I really love, and he said, "I think the purpose of humanity is to explore the boundaries of what it means to be human." And I think that that's what I take from that, is that these questions that we're asking ourselves, these are exactly the right ones that you need to have to fuel a company like ours, to fuel a human company that's trying to provide really a life for people in it and a life for people outside of it. As I was putting this presentation together, I asked some of the people I was working with, so what does honesty mean to you? And Natalie, one of our designers, said, honesty is like water. It finds a way, it finds a path through. And I think that's so true. I really agree with it. But I would say the other part of this comment is that, like water, honesty can be blocked. It can be dammed. It's actually so much easier to damage honesty than it is to nurture it. The world is not set up to promote honesty. I used to tell my daughters this, that no one in the world is trying to make your life bigger, And I would say this is about honesty. No one in the world is trying to make you honest, It's something that you really have to believe in for yourself, and you really have to kind of push for yourself. And it's so easy to damage it, even unwittingly. You just make small decisions that kind of at a later date block it. And so you have to really be very conscious of it all the time. And I think that this is one of the reasons why we continue to be very skeptical as Zeus about how things are done, and why it is hard to describe what Zeus is, because when we look at the way things are done, the way things have been done, it's not simply that they bring with them old practices, but they bring with them ideas and sort of an emotional context that is probably damaging to honesty when we're honest about it. So I think the other thing, though, about honesty is, the other thing about honesty like water is that if you can figure out how to let it free, it really does guide you. I would say that, what I tried to sort of talk about was honesty and freedom, all of those values. They've been at the heart of pretty much every single decision we've made. We agonize over every single decision. We continue to agonize over every single decision to try and figure out, is it true to these things that we wanted to do? Is it true to these ideas that we had? And as a result, I hope that they're built into the fabric of the company in a really profound way. I think that these things are the things that are actually the most permanent within our company. So, long-winded way of answering that question. I think ultimately this is the purpose of this journey. You know, we're not a marketing company, we're not a branding company. I think the purpose of this company is really to explore whether a business like ours can support honesty and real humanity, whether a business like ours can create more honesty and humanity within the small world and the small set of clients that we're able to influence, and to remain, you know, open and honest, and to see really what we can do together. And I would say that I don't know that we're ever going to prove this, but what I would always say is that I think we're here to really just prove that it can't be done. As long as we exist, we're proof that we can disprove that it can't be done. And I think that, you know, I really think that the greatest joy in life is learning what you can do, who you are, what you can do, what you're capable of. And for us, that's really in continuing to try to build a business around values, to try and see if it's possible for a business like ours to thrive and to endure. So, thank you very much.